Hello, good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee of Portsmouth City Council held in the Council Chamber here in the Guildhall. I'm Gerald Vernon-Jackson, I'm Chair of the committee today. Just going through the usual bits, there's no fire alarm expected, so if it goes, it's real. And can you meet by Queen Victoria's statue in the Guildhall Square? And if you've signed in, could you sign out so people don't come and look for you if there is a fire? We've got live streaming, so people, this is all filmed and live streamed, so people doing deputations, you'll be filmed and broadcast to the world, or the 3 people who may be watching, because this is a public meeting. Please use the microphones and please turn them off when you finish speaking because the system doesn't work. Can we make sure that when members vote, and it's only the members of the committee who can vote, that we raise our hands clearly so that we can make sure that the vote is clear. The way in which we do this then is the officer presentation on each application, followed by members of the public wanting to come and speak, or councillors from those areas which we call deputations. And there's 12 minutes in favour, 12 minutes against. Then members' questions to try to clarify things, and then we move to comments by members of the committee where proposals will be put before a vote is taken, and then there's a vote. Colleagues, we have apologies today from both Councillor Shah and Councillor Hugh Mason. I don't think we've got any subs for either of them, have we? No. Okay. Let's quickly just run through and make sure everybody knows who everybody is. So I'm Gerald Vernon-Jackson, I'm Chair of the committee. Ian.
Good morning. Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
Good morning, Chair. Chris Atwell, St Thomas Ward.
Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward, Vice Chair of this committee.
Mary Vallely, Cosham and Wimmering.
Derek North, Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Matthew Cordy, Hilsey Ward.
Morning, Chair. Councillor Dorrington, Eastney and Craneswater.
Peter Candlish, also Eastney and Craneswater.
Lovely. And then people who are coming to speak at the committee. So I'll just make sure we know everybody. So I think in the back row, Councillor Russell.
Councillor Russell Simpson of Hilsey Ward, reading for Fearon Road and Oriel Road.
Thank you very much indeed. And the lady just in front of you? Hello. Now, let me just... Would you be... Now, Mrs. Dr. Coleman.
I'm deep in my computer. I'm Nancy Holman for deputising for the application for 4C Wilson Grove.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed.
Oliver Farr from Applecore, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants for Fearon Road, Oriel Road and Laburnum Grove.
Great.
I'm Michelle Cole, deputising for the St Michael's Lodge.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And
sorry. Lynn Corrigan, deputation for 4C Wilson Grove.
Darren Brewer, on behalf of the applicant for Paddington Road.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, declarations of members' interests. I've got a personal and prejudicial interest in St Michael's Lodge, in that, as colleagues will know, being council means you don't have access to the pension fund, so I own a flat there, which is my pension, and therefore I can't take part in that, but I am going to do a deputation and then leave the meeting. Are there any other declarations of interest? I have also checked about Oxford Road, and my advice from the city solicitor is that I don't have an interest. I know somebody who lives nearby, but it's not next door, so his advice is that it's not an issue. Any other interest to declare? No? Okay. Colleagues, the minutes of the previous meeting. Colleagues, are you happy with these minutes? Are you happy for me to sign? Okay, let's do that. So we've done something. Okay, we then move to the applications, and it's St Michael's Lodge, so I shall withdraw. And Judith, as Vice Chair, has very kindly said that she will come and run this section of the meeting.
Welcome to the meeting. We'll proceed with this item, agenda item 4, which is the construction of 18 dwellings comprising 12 houses and 6 flats with associated landscaping and parking and vehicular access from Diamond Street. First thing is, as Gerald explained, is taking full presentation of the application that we can all hear. Ian, thank you.
Thank you. As said, this is an application for 18 new homes on this site. That is the site, you can see it's within the square of Flint, Gold, Stone and Silver Streets. It is, as you can, I'm sure, see the right-hand side of that image. There it is with its outline. The site is largely an existing empty site. The far end of Diamond Street does cross over open garden verge land to the rear of the flats you can see bottom left of our square. Some images. I'm sure you're all aware of the site, however, as of course this is an application that is resubmitted following a refusal by this committee. This is application 201493, the previous application, which was appealed and dismissed on a technical ground, which I will come to, but that is the site. This is the application. It is materially the same as that previously considered at appeal. The notable attributes to it are covered off in the papers. I'll particularly draw your attention to section 1 that runs you through those key issues. Say 12 houses, 6 flats, which would be offered up as affordable homes through a 106 agreement, served by 32 parking spaces, a mixture of parking spaces accessed, as you can see, north and south off Silver and Gold, a parking forecourt centrally accessed off Diamond Street, and garages within several of the homes. So that is the elevations and street scenes. As you can see, we are largely sort of 3.5, 4-storey, depending on how you do your definitions, properties. The top is obviously the flats going around the corner, then houses through the return back towards, and you can see the Flint Street flats bottom left there as you're coming along the bottom, the southern elevation of that site. Zooming in, some elevations for the terrace front and rear you can see there. Some upper floor plans, we can zoom into these if that is necessary. Fundamentally, the houses are garages on the bottom with one bedroom and office sometimes for the larger homes, and a laundry room. Then on the first floor, the left-hand image, is the primary living space, kitchen, dining spaces, and then the second floor and above are bedrooms and bathrooms. So there you go, there's the rooms in the roof for those central terrace ones. There's the flats, 2 one-bed, 2-person flats on the ground floor, and then going up they become 2-bed, 3-person flats on the first and second floor. You'll see bin stalls and cycle stalls obviously in that ground floor floor plan as well. Key issue of previous concern is the impact on those Flint Street flats, and that corner on the corner of Flint Street and Gold Street. The two properties directly affected, you can see in the photocopied image on the left there, the red circle, a kitchen, the blue circle, a bedroom, and obviously you can see how they interact with the adjacent terrace in the bottom right-hand image. Other key area that's been raised by local residents is the impact on Diamond Street. As you can see, the scheme, this is taken looking in the site, if you will, down towards and out of the site, so down Diamond Street. You can see a fire escape on the right hand of that photograph. That's serving the adjacent building. That would be outside the site's new gate, which you can see underneath the canopy of the tree in the left-hand plan image, which obviously is set back further here because you've got that bit of amenity grassed area, as I mentioned, behind it. That is that piece of amenity grassed area, if you can see, where Diamond Street finishes, tucked around the corner of the building there, that Gold Street, Flint Street Flats, and then the road would cut along, running along that closed boarded fence. I'll leave you back with that image. I draw your attention to the Supplementary Matters report. In there we have picked up a typo, as I've just mentioned, those Gold Street, Flint Street flats, just being clear what they are described as. I think it is clear, however, which block of flats we are referring to. We also have a late letter from Councillor Jeffrey, who's been unable to attend, and it's a relatively short note, so we have provided it in full within the SMAT and provided a response, the response being that it is obviously recognised that part of land, as I showed on that photo area, which is to the rear of the flats, would of course become now an access driveway. We consider that to be acceptable, especially when balanced against the 5-year land supply, and obviously highlighting that the transfer of that land, which is in the ownership of PCC, and any agreements that the council needs to make to enable this development, is a matter outside the planning process. Planning is just that, a consent under the Town and Country Planning Act. They will need several other consents, landowner permission, by purchasing the land, building regulation controls. If there are leases over that, they'll need to seek those variations, and all of those things are post-consent matters they will have to resolve to be able to deliver their planning application. We are, however, satisfied none of them prohibit the grant of planning permission today. We have also received one further comment with concerns about parking, trees, and the overall density, which are matters already dealt with in the report. So that is the Supplementary Matters paper, and as said, that makes no change to the recommendation of officers, which is to grant planning permission. Final point on that, as I said, this is a scheme that has in effect gone to the Planning Inspectorate already and was found to be unacceptable on the, if you will, found to be totally acceptable on matters of the impact to residential amenity, the design, the appearance, the highways implications, all of those key planning considerations. What was unacceptable was that they had been unable to provide a Section 106 agreement to deliver the necessary affordable housing and the necessary mitigation to the SPA. That is now all in hand. The final documents we executed should plan permission now be granted. So the one reason the Planning Inspectorate had to withhold plan permission falls away through that agreed 106, which has been agreed at heads of terms already and is discussed in the report. Consequently, the officer's recommendation is very clearly that this is capable and should be granted plan permission, as all of the other matters have been deemed to be acceptable, notwithstanding the concerns of local residents by the Planning Inspectorate on recent appeal. We have public speaking noted on this. We did have 4 speakers down, so your deputation list assigns them 3 minutes each. 2 of them haven't turned up today, so the 2 public speakers therefore would have 6 minutes each to comment on their objection. Happy to take any questions.
Are you taking questions now, or do we go straight to the
Normally public speaking first, yes.
Sorry?
So normally the public speaking would happen first.
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah. Well, so the questions to Ian from members will come later in the process. Public, we first of all go for people who are objecting to the application. And Ian has explained that, how many are there that you hear? One? You're not a member of the public, Gerald. I think you come later.
In this case, yes.
I am a member of the public.
Okay, so there are two of you. So you've split the 12 minutes between 6 minutes each. That's okay. You can decide between yourself who goes first.
Thank you, Chair. So the thing I'm worried about here is the access. I think it's good that they've now decided to do some affordable housing, but my concern is around the access. So you can see, if we could go back to that image. Diamond Street is a little cul-de-sac which effectively is just 3 car parking spaces at the moment. And what this development attempts to do is to extend that into the middle of the site. There are other options for access, because you can see on 3 sides of it, on Silver Street, Gold Street and Stone Street, there is access available onto the site, but they've chosen not to take their access there. They've tried to do it off Diamond Street, and the problem that creates is that it takes away the garden of the block of flats on Flint Street south of Diamond Street. So the open space where children play, it's a grass space, is removed by this. And so I'm very concerned that what we're doing here is to create something where there are gardens for these private flats, but for the block of council flats, they will lose their open space which children used to play in. The bit that I'm worried about is that there is the thing to say, okay, well, that's not a planning issue. It's down to the housing department to have a discussion with the developer. But we've been caught with this before. At Fraser Range, the committee, there was a vote that it was in favour of granting planning permission. But the City Council owned the access road and didn't want to allow it to be widened, losing public open space. The developer took the council to court and won to say we're unlike most landowners. Once the City Council Planning Committee had made a resolution to grant planning permission, then the developer had a justified expectation that the council would sell its land to that developer to make that happen, and the council could not say no. So I'm worried that the housing department, as far as I can find out, has done no consultation with the tenants who live in that block at all about losing their garden and their open space. And I would suggest to the committee that the sensible thing to do is to defer this and ask the housing department to have a discussion. I don't know what the decision will be, but about selling that land or not, but their decision should not be fettered by what we do. And we have precedent in this city where our decision as a planning committee has stopped a department of the council having discretion. So I think it is just wrong that the tenants who live in that block are having their garden removed by this planning application with no consultation from the housing department at all, and there's significant loss of amenity. And I would ask for a deferral to allow the housing department to do that consultation. We've seen in last meeting how good they can be in terms of community consultation with tenants and residents. They just haven't been in this case, and I would ask for a deferral to allow that to take place so that we can come to something where at least the tenants know what is or isn't going to happen.
Thank you, Gerald.
I live in Flint Street, and I can tell you that there is at least 16 to 20 children that live in the block in Flint Street, and they are for regularly using that greenery outside to play in, because there is a gate one side and then there's a little section that you can say don't go past the wall, and they know not to go past that wall. My other concern is that the fire escape that you showed in the picture, is used on a daily basis, morning and regular times during the day, for the nursery that have children being dropped off to there, and there is 3 parking spaces, but the parents, there's not much pavement space, and the parents do congregate in that area with their children to take them to and from nursery during the day. So there is a lot of concerns about the access into the site, and if they were to choose a different access, that it may be a possibility, but I don't know obviously how things will go, but that is my concerns on the area, is that we would lose our outside space, and then there's children going in and out of nursery all day down Diamond Street.
Thank you very much, both of you, admirably brief. Anything else you want to say? Thank you. In support of the application, was it? There's nobody here in support of the application, is that right?
That's right.
Good, thank you very much. We now move on to questions from members. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is about access. That is incredibly narrow, Diamond Street, much narrower than the roads surrounding the other the buildings. Has anybody looked at the ability for large vehicles to turn into it? Because you know, I know the roads. I can't picture how an emergency fire engine, for example, or a removal van would turn into that very narrow road.
Yes, the Highway Authority have looked at the matter. Obviously, the road is wide enough to enable the relevant vehicles, those refuse collection vehicles and fire appliances, should they need to go in there. Obviously, they can also access and would access, depending on what they're doing, the properties from the other side of the main roads. But yes, the Highway Authority have no concerns about the ability to turn relevant vehicles within that space.
At paragraph 654 highway access doesn't mention that specifically as an issue. Is that one of your concerns, Chris?
Well, I just, you know, knowing that the road is incredibly narrow and there are no plans to widen it, I guess.
No, there's no plans to widen it. It is wide enough to drive a refuse vehicle or a fire appliance through. Yes.
I don't know how you'd get 2 vehicles coming in. I mean, it just...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you had 2 large vehicles trying to manoeuvre it, it's an access driveway for the 20-odd parking spaces and bin stalls, etc. It's not a main highway, and that is deemed an acceptable solution. Yeah.
Any other questions from members?
This is a bit of a softball over the plate, because I think I know the answer to it, but there is a single EV point marked at the top of the diagram. Can we just confirm that all the properties are... We're trying to get new properties to be fit for the future, which will include chargeability, ideally from homes to avoid other requirements. Can we confirm that these houses are so provided?
Thank you. So the provision of EV charging for new homes is now a matter for building regulations rather than planning policy and decision making. Since June 2022, Part S of the building regulations was introduced that lays out the specific requirements. And those specific requirements, it's a regulation. There's lots of complex bits, but fundamentally, when you build new homes, you have to have as many EV charging spaces as you have new homes, so 18 in this case. So to pass the building regulations, they will need to provide at least 18 EV charging spaces, irrespective of what they may have labelled in their plans, which have been largely unaltered for a number of years as this has gone through the process. They'll have to meet current building regulation standards, which does mean you have to have those charging places within the scheme, and obviously there's plenty of locations where they can achieve that. There are caveats, exceptions, limitations, restrictions under those regulations, as you would expect, but all of those matters would be the matter of judgment to pass the building regulation requirements rather than a planning consenting process.
I've got a couple of questions while others are thinking of further questions. One is a sort of minor one. They both refer and look ahead to our new local plan, which is in preparation at the moment. Under page 35, which is about biodiversity, bats and bird boxes, paragraph 666, would it be possible, if we are minded to approve this application, for us to specify that we want swift boxes?
No, because we don't have a policy requiring that, nor is there a national policy. So I'm sure we can obviously advise the applicant that that's a request from the Vice Chair, but there is no specific requirement that swift boxes should be preferred in above other forms of ecological mitigation.
It is in our new local plan in the draft.
Which has no way near enough weight as yet
I
to
know
able
we're
to be
giving it
applied.
some weight sometimes and not others. That's fine. The next thing is, since the last time we looked at this as a planning committee, if we go to the plan that shows the site layout, is the space between the T-shaped block of flats and the first block in the proposed development, is that narrow, is it wider than it was before?
That is the previously proposed one. That is the current proposed one. So as you can see, is actually wider than it previously was. So.
And then my third question from the chair is, we have very little green space in the city. Given the importance of green space, both for play and for biodiversity, would the green space provided around this block of flats, the T-shaped block of flats, council-owned, is the loss of that a material consideration? Because I think that since we looked at this before, we've become much more vigilant about the loss of green space than we were before.
Yes, the loss of that green space is a material consideration, and obviously the loss of that green space to provide an access road is not a positive contribution in and of itself of the scheme. It's certainly the best place from an urban design perspective to take access, because you have an existing cul-de-sac, and this enables you to have a firm and clear frontage on all of these surrounding roads. So it is certainly what we would recommend as urban design professionals to best make advantage and layout of this site. But no, clearly it's never a positive thing to result in the loss of some public green space, which that results in. As we say, we've had to weigh that against, while members' minds may be more focused on green spaces as a point of fact, the housing need assigned and identified within the city has also gone up as well, so members' mind also need to be equally focused on meeting housing need, and national guidance is very clear: when you aren't meeting your need, and we're not under our current plan by some way, that is a very strong material consideration. And when we weigh those two things together, this is a good scheme that fully meets policy. Those negative aspects of it, and all schemes have positive and negatives, loss of green space being one of those negatives, is quite clearly outweighed by the gain of 18 new homes, 6 of which obviously are affordable flats.
Thank you very much. Any other questions now? People got a chance to think about other questions they'd like to ask? Then in which case we'll move on to comments. I'll hold my comments as chair until others have made their comments on this application. Would you like to go first, Chris?
I mean, looking at this application, as we must, there are clearly concerns about loss of amenity. I mean, I think that's incredibly. I attach a lot of weight to the loss of people having access to green space, particularly in such a built-up area. So I perhaps apply more weight to that than others. I think the access is a problem. I have no idea how large vehicles are going to turn in and out of there. So concerns about that. I'm concerned about safety of people accessing the nursery near to where we live. We saw people in a nursery have a lucky escape when a vehicle lost control and went through a wall near to us. So the concerns for that. I think Councillor Van Jackson's right about people haven't been consulted about potential loss of amenity. Unhappy. I'm sure there's a scheme that would work for this site, but for me, this isn't it.
Are you moving towards a recommendation there, or is it deferral or...
I'll wait to see what colleagues...
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Well, from the chair, my comment, I was at the last committee that looked at this. My comment is that the seriousness of the loss of the open space, but also the precedent that has been quoted to us, and I took some advice from a planning officer friend last night on this, that if we were to give permission, it would prejudice the opportunity of the housing department to think about whether or not, as an authority owning the land, we would be automatically assumed to have implicitly approved it if we give planning permission as now. And I would like to propose from the chair, as part of the comment, that we should defer this application until the housing department has done a proper consultation and we have reviewed the consequences of the loss of open space there. And I would suggest that it would be sensible to do the piece of work around the access to the nursery and any highway measures that might be needed to mitigate against accidents for children, rather than making a decision today. I mean, I'd like to say that I think the overall designs are as they were before, good in general, and I think that the existence and the inclusion of affordable housing is absolutely what we wanted to see. So, but I do feel that a deferral, so that we don't railroad the housing department into selling a piece of land that they haven't yet considered the merits of, would be foolish. I don't know if I have a seconder for that.
Chairman, before you move forward, I do need to provide some advice, because obviously, as your planning officer, and having already discussed this matter with Legal Services and the Housing Department, I can confirm that that isn't a concern of the city solicitor, that we would in any way fetter or prejudice the Housing Department's issues. Any comparison to other cases can be clearly distinguished. That is not a reason of concern to your legal advisors or your planning authority. So while I can hear the concern as expressed by Mr. Vernon-Jackson, it is not something any professional advisor would support. Obviously, deferral does create the risk of appeal against non-determination. It would be out of time on that basis. And in light of the fact that that fact hasn't in any way changed from the previous scheme that has gone through, it is obviously entirely untrue to say there is no consultation with residents. Residents are fully aware of the scheme and its implications. There hasn't been a discussion with them about their leases, etc., which would be a technical matter should the council choose to support this scheme as a landowner out with the planning process. My very firm recommendation is you have no legitimate planning reason to defer on this grounds, and any advice to the contrary is flawed.
I mean, I think, thank you very much. I mean, I think that that's probably why we're not wanting at this stage to refuse the application. But it doesn't make sense for one organisation to do one thing with the right hand and another thing with the left hand. And I think we owe it to the residents in that block and to the housing department and to a wider consideration of loss of green spaces, which I don't think we would condone in other situations, to defer it. And I understand the risk, and thank you for your advice. I do understand what you're saying. Chris?
Just to pick up on local people being fully aware about how things have progressed, that the planning notices on the lampposts around Flint Street and Diamond Street are still dated 2023. So if any local person were to go and access the information available to them publicly, there is still information about no affordable housing, and the date is October last year. So people aren't fully aware of
just to be clear, if you access the council's website on the reference, the 2023 reference, that's all up-to-date information.
But if you're walking down the street and you're a local person and you're interested in what's happening...
the question and the point you raised was around the residents of those blocks of flats. They would be the one that the landowner would consult their issues. They'd be notified, and obviously they issue compared to someone who is walking past who quite right wouldn't be involved in that secondary consultation activity anyway, I'd suggest.
Just to raise the point that there's out-of-date information available to the public.
And as I say, there is no out-of-date information available.
Yeah, but lots of people don't go online. Come on.
Yeah, so whether people are looking at information, we can't control that, but the accusation is that we are publishing information that is not up to date. That is not true. Yeah.
We're not removing old information.
well, nor would we, because obviously we are obliged to show the good practices, to show the progress of an application. So you have the old applications, the early stages, and the superseded documents. That is what one must do as a local planning authority.
May I suggest, I think this is a serious matter, and we have previously had some difficulties that seem to be resolved very quickly by officers about misleading posting of those pieces of paper on lampposts. Chris, would you be willing to take a photograph of what you can see there and discuss it differently? It would come under the category of maladministration rather than, but it is still a serious thing and would, in my mind, reinforce the case for deferral. Of course, people will have, living in the block, will have had the same access as, all things being equal, to notices about the planning application, but they may not all have realised the implication of selling part of the land.
It's just, you know, there's something just not quite right about where we're at with this application. So I mean, I would second your motion to defer to get a bit more consultation and information.
Do we have an alternative recommendation? Well, then I would like to put my proposal to the vote. It's for a deferral, not for a. And you know, there is some merit to this application, particularly the inclusion of affordable housing, which the inspector had picked up. But I think there's sufficient doubt about the loss of open space that is part of the amenity enjoyed by council tenants. It's a council block and council land. I don't want to tie the hands of James Hill and their colleagues before they had a proper chance to consider the sale of the land and its merits and demerits and the discussion with residents. Can I have, yeah, I've got a seconder, Chris Atwell. We're lacking a lawyer today, so it's a bit testing for us. But notwithstanding the perfectly understandable and welcome advice of the planning officers, can I have a show of hands as to who's supporting that? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seems that is carried. Can I have votes against or abstentions? Sorry?
Are we asking for abstention or against?
I think it's normal that we would record abstentions and against.
Yeah. So I probably would have abstained actually on this one.
Okay. Okay, so we have 5 votes for and 2 abstentions. Difficult one. Thank you very much, colleagues, for taking it seriously and discussing it. I think I can probably hand back to Gerald, and I wonder if somebody could go and get him and make sure he's not wandered off too far, or else I'll carry on. I'll carry on the meeting. Is the man from the news going? Did you find him? And he's coming back? Thank you so much. That was above and beyond.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for the slight performance of musical chairs. I know this is not in the normal tradition of this committee, but shall we stick to the agenda as it's printed? Now, Chris, are you okay with that? It wouldn't. Okay. All right, so let's move on to Paddington Road.
'51 Paddington Road. This is the change of use of a building that's currently a 8-bedroom, 12-person HMO and a first-floor flat, making some alterations to it to create a single 12-bedroom, 12-person HMO. So actually what we've got is two distinct planning units, an HMO with 8 bedrooms and but several of them are being occupied by 2 people, and a first-floor flat, and merging them together into a single planning unit, one 12-bed, 12-person HMO. So occupancy is going down as part of this scheme. So that's the site. You can see it's a large building wrapping around in the rear of adjacent neighbours. There it is. We've got a few HMOs in the area. We are below a 10% mix as far as it is relevant, because obviously we're not adding to the HMOs or indeed to the HMO occupation in this part of the city. And there is the proposed ground floor. So you can see on that left-hand image, that ground floor, it's taken up with a sitting, dining, kitchen, laundry, south to north, on that right-hand spur. And there's a central courtyard in there, that rectangle in the middle of the imagery, before you can see the first of the 4 bedrooms on the moving left across that image. As you go up, there is an illustration, that's bedroom 9, 10, 11 and 12. So that is the property. So we're not looking at notable external changes, though there's some refurbishment and tidying up going. It is that internal alterations to incorporate the flat into the property to be a single 12-bed HMO. And there's some imageries, as you can see, that long taking from the sitting space through the dining space. Through, you can see then beyond the kitchen space and down to the laundry space, and you can just about make out the light coming in that bottom left image from the adjacent courtyard. If it helps, there is the annotated bedroom numbers on that wing on the ground floor, 1, 2, 3, 4. There is a blow up of the communal space. Above that, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then above, on top of that, the 9, 10, 11 and 12 bedrooms. The sizes of the bedrooms are all laid out in 5.9 of the report. As you can see, they are all good-sized, generous bedrooms. I will just leave us back on that image. Your SPD on HMOs kind of fizzles out around 10, to be honest, so it is an application, as is always the case, because we don't do planning by numbers, of applying judgment of whether the overall living environment is acceptable for the proposed number of occupants. So obviously we had an 8-bed, 12-person HMO, we now have a 12-bed, 12-person HMO, so, but with a different orientation and layout internally. The communal living space as described is 46 square metres. If this was 10 people, 34 would be our published guidance, so a couple more people and a lot more communal living space. So if we use the numbers as a guide, we're certainly satisfied that guides us to concluding this is an acceptable living environment. It is a very large and well-appointed communal space for the proposed 12 people. All the rooms are good sizes, several of them 13 metres and above, making good space available for residents to use their rooms as well as part of their amenity. When applying, therefore, the thinking around the overall acceptability of the living environment, officers are satisfied that this is a good living environment for the proposed number and type of users, being 12 HMO occupiers. It is therefore fully compliant with policy and recommended for approval. We have the applicant speaking today, and nothing on the SMAT to add, so obviously happy to take any questions after public speaking.
Mr. Brewer, welcome.
Morning.
The floor is yours.
Apologies, I'm feeling a little bit rough this morning, so if I sound a bit
So, was it a big night last night then, Darren?
Oh, I wish it was. Those were the days, weren't they? So, I haven't actually prepared anything because this is a very popular pro-pod of ours. We have 8-bed, 12 people. We have had times when we've had 12 occupants in this property, and our communal space was designed should we ever have couples living in the property. So the reason for us going for a 12-bed, 12-person was we had the flat above. This used to be the Jehovah Witness building in Paddington Road. This has been successful for us in taking a commercial building and putting it back into resi. Technically, what Ian has said is we have dropped the residency because we did have a family living in the flat, 4 members, 2 kids, 2 mum and dad. So technically, we would have had at one stage 16 people in the building, and we've reduced it to 12. So I appreciate everything that goes on with residents and parking and doctors and hospitals and dentists, but actually we haven't increased the numbers here. All we've done is increase the bedrooms, and this is, I say, one of our popular ones in Copner. We're very proud of it. We've had no antisocial behaviour, and we actually think that the size of buildings in the right location is a way forward for us. Because actually we're not taking residential buildings. I say this was a commercial building when we bought it in 2019, I believe. That's it.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Maguire? Nope. Okay, comments, ladies and gentlemen? I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Smythe. Are there any other proposals? Nope. Okay. Can I see all those in favour of this application, please show. Can I see those against, please show. Can I see those abstaining, please show. Okay, so planning permission is granted 6-0 and 2 abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we now move on to number 4C, Wilson Grove.
Thank you. This is an application partly retrospective for the demolition of a front boundary wall in the Campbell Road Conservation Area and the installation of hard standing, a drop curb and new railings. I would explain the demolition of walls and often does not require planning permission in conservation areas, specifically where those walls are over 1 metres. They are excluded from the permitted development right that exists, and consequently abnormally planned permission is required for their demolition. The interaction of the proposal and PD I will unpack a little bit as we go through. So that's the property on a corner of Wilson Grove. This is the property shortly after the application was validated, and as you can see, the partial retrospective nature of this. That red brick is the driveway that has been created, and previously a wall, there was a pedestrian gate in it, a wall extended all the way around the property boundary. There is a plan of what was there before, and there's a axiometric of it. This is the proposal, so as you can see that open area and just cut off, sorry about that, they are proposing to put railings into that gap, so it would look like that. So those railings are about 1.3 metres in maximum height. I'll take you some images, so there's what the wall looked like. That's the neighbours and extended round, as you can see where it finishes, that wall effectively filled in the gap. I'll allow your imaginations to do the rest of it. The proposal is, of course, to enable off-street parking on this space. There will be a single parking bay provided adjacent to the northern boundary. And obviously it's an open driveway, but a dropped curb is proposed, which will be approximately 5 metres in width, well, 5 curbstones taken out to enable one car to go straight in along that northern boundary. That will result in the loss of 5 metres of parking bay In a sense, the proposal the Highway Authority would be considering is to put an H-bar marking within the existing lined parking bay to confirm that one cannot park there, but without obviously causing obstruction to people trying to leave this driveway. But it would enable the householder themselves with a permit to park across their own driveway, so it would still be a legitimate parking place on that basis. So consequently, if the householder does utilise a permit and park across the driveway, that is a net gain of parking in the area of one. If they don't use a permit and park in there, it's a neutral impact, one permit available space now being one driveway space. As I say, the interaction with permitted development is worthy of just a quick commentary. The demolition of the wall required planning permission. The creation of a new railing wall above 1 metre requires planning permission. The construction of a drop curb associated with the hard standing is permitted development. The hard standing itself, which we've been told is permeable, is permitted development. So most of this, the actual big image is permitted development. The key material considerations I would draw members' attention to is the impact on the value, the appearance, the street scene within the conservation area of the loss of that wall and its replacement as a secondary action that hasn't yet happened with the railings as illustrated in this image and the acceptability of that within the conservation area. Many of the walls in this conservation area have a specific Article 4 direction, somewhat redundantly in many cases, requiring express plan permission for their alteration. This wall doesn't, and that's partly because it doesn't have the same, as you can see from let's find a picture of the home, there you go, the age of this little run of homes here and their associated curtilage, they don't have the same heritage value as other walls and other elements of the conservation area. Like many of our conservation areas, there's a range of different properties, both in terms of age and quality within them. Overall, we are satisfied that the removal of the wall is an acceptable thing to do within this site, within the conservation area, and consequently the railings, while not an optimal design, would be, I think, and I'll speak partly for our conservation officer there, not the design we would prefer to see, are insufficiently harmful to warrant refusal in this case. The Highway Authority are satisfied that with one space, and the drop curb created to allow that one space, there is no highway safety issue, and the sight lines, which will have cars parked in them, is an acceptable matter from a technical engineering safety point of view. And similarly, as I say, we're looking at a neutral impact on total parking, or should the resident choose to utilise the opportunity, one additional parking space within this area. So again, in terms of overall network impacts, we're satisfied that's a neutral impact as well. So while the railings are an unusual choice for the character of the area, that is the only negative specifically identified within the scheme by officers. And on that basis, we are satisfied that isn't enough to warrant refusal of plan permission. It is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, including an additional condition just to have those final details of that crossover. This is from the SMAT, reviewed through a further post-consent condition. I draw your attention to the SMAT as well, where we've provided some additional clarification, which I know our infrastructure highways team have been speaking to the applicant about the drop curb issue, because obviously that drop curb consenting is again out with planning itself, and generally they would not, not you, they would not allow drop curbs if there is other parking made available, and the resident has provided an explanation of, while notwithstanding there is a garage in a block behind this which they own, they don't feel that that is adequate for their purposes. As I say, whether or not the Highway Authority will give consent for that drop curb under our guidance is for the Highway Authority to do. That's out with your issue, and it is permitted development one way or the other. For that, we are satisfied that there is no reason to withhold plan permission from a planning perspective. We have both an objector and the applicant for speaking for deputations, and after that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. So should we first go to Dr. Holman, who's objecting, and then to Ms. Corrigan, who's the owner? Thank you very much indeed. Yes, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. I am Nancy Holman. I live at 6A Wilson Grove. There are a couple of reasons that I would like to discuss in terms of an objection to this application. As we've heard, she does have a double garage at the back of her property. I just want to inform the panel that this is 4.99 meters by 5.86 meters, which far exceeds the requirements of 2.5 meters by 5 meters as set out in PCC's Vehicle Access Policy of 2019. I also want to point out that we all use these garages regularly. I understand that she feels unsafe going back to her garage, but you know, in my property, we're both women. We go back and use the garage. We don't have a problem, as did the former occupants. And I think it would be worrying to set a precedent if we took into account a subjective view on personal safety, given that normally these things are based on, for example, very objective measurements in terms of space. Regardless of the size of the drop curb, I understand we're talking about maybe a net loss of one space, but depending on where the white lines are, that could be the loss of 2 spaces when the applicant already has a space to park. I think the thing for me that is most important and where this hangs is conservation area policy. I have only had the time to ziz through the conservation officer's report, which came in incredibly late on my phone. So I do want to make some points here. The proposals very clearly contravene conservation area guidelines, and those are located in section 6. I'm sure all of you know them very well. There is one that I want to stress here, and that is that the City Council will discourage the removal, demolition, or unsympathetic alteration of existing walls which are of architectural or townscape value. And this is something I want to come to in just a moment. In the officer's report that you have, in point 3.1, he says there is no relevant planning history to be considered in the relationship to this application. And honestly, I would differ on that considerably. This development, and I do stress that this is a development of 6 houses that are all the same and contained by this boundary wall, has had a very, very long and contentious planning history. It came up for development a number of times. The development itself was finally granted conditional permission in 1975, and condition 4 of the decision notice set down by PCC is that the existing front boundary wall shall be retained or a new wall erected to the satisfaction of the LPA. The reasons given for the foregoing conditions are to secure properly planned development, to ensure the appearance of the development is satisfactory, and this is really important here, to maintain as far as possible the appearance of the area. So this is Portsmouth Council setting out that this wall is important to the townscape of the conservation area. It's also really important to note that the permission was granted in '75, which is 3 years after the Campbell Road conservation area was declared in '72. Therefore, these conditions were really specifically related to the maintenance of townscape and the conservation area, and therefore material considerations with regards to this application. These are Portsmouth City Council's own decisions and conditions for release of planning permission. I also want to point out a couple of things on the heritage statement and drawings given by the applicant, the ones that you've shown here today. The drawings that have been submitted aren't at all a fully accurate representation of the boundary wall, which is 1.16 meters in height, and it encloses, I think, I tried to measure it with I'm not great at measuring, but over 1 meter in height, and it goes all the way around from 4A all the way around to 4C, so it goes around the corner, and it fully contains the development itself, and that's why that boundary wall was created, to actually improve townscape. There aren't any gaps in the wall, and it doesn't change height. So on the drawings, it looks like as it goes around the corner that it's a fence, but it's actually the wall with a small fence on top. I think the drawings are there kind of to downplay the importance of the wall and to justify its removal. It's worth also noting that we've already had a dismissed appeal for the removal of a wall in this conservation area, and the inspector stated that the works have not preserved the character or appearance of the conservation area, etc. Teach urban planning, and one of the things that I really want to say is that I try to tell my students that planning is necessarily a balancing act between public and private goods that, as planners, we must try to make. The applicant has off-street parking, which is adequate, but she's making a personal choice not to use it. Granting permission, therefore, confers a considerable private good at the expense of the public good. It needlessly takes away parking in the area that already has constrained parking, and it clearly damages the appearance of the area as set out in the original decision notice and subsequent, and I need to shut up now, subsequent PCC policy, but not bad on timing. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you. Ms. Corrigan, if you'd like to push the button, your microphone will go live, and you have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to express my appreciation for the committee's... Sorry, I'll sit a bit nearer. Is that better? So firstly, I'd just like to express my appreciation for the committee's time and attention to this application. The retrospective application was the result of a genuine misunderstanding following the initial communication with the planning team. I believed I had followed all of the required procedures after receiving approval from COLAS and Highways for the off-road parking in November 23 last year. It was only when work had begun in April this year that I became aware planning permission was also required for changes to the front garden, and hence the retrospective application. The purpose of this application is to ensure a safe and secure parking space directly outside my home. As a woman alone, I feel vulnerable walking from my parked car, especially at night. I'd like to reiterate the findings of the planning officer. The proposed changes are minor in nature, involving only the partial removal of the boundary wall and installation of hard standing in the previous front garden. The Heritage and Design Officer has concluded that the significance of the application site is minor in relation to the conservation area, and the impact on the surrounding character and appearance is minimal, with no harmful effects. The majority of the boundary wall remains intact, with the gap being filled with a cast iron gate. The materials used would be sympathetic to the neighbouring dwellings and consistent with local area, complying with policy PCS 23 of the Portsmouth Local Plan 2012. The reference to off-site garage parking has been deemed irrelevant to this application and unsuitable for parking, for practical parking use. No harm to residential amenity is expected from the loss of parking spaces, as my car, which would have been parked on the street, would benefit from an off-site parking space, with the potential to put another car in front as well, which results in a negligible effect on overall parking capacity. Taking all these considerations into account, and with the positive recommendations from Highways, Heritage and Design and the planning officers, I would kindly request the committee to view this application favourably and grant approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, colleagues, any questions? Councillor Smythe.
Please, could we have another look at the plan that shows the access to the car parking space? And I know that Mr. Maguire did talk about a possible limitation of where on that land a car could park. And I didn't, you went past it quite quickly, and I didn't quite work out where the actual access was. It'd be nice to have seen a sort of arrow from the road into the car parking space. Sorry, I'm perhaps being a little dense, but I'd like to recap that situation, please, so that I can understand it.
Yeah, so as you saw from the photograph, the whole area is hard landscaping, so you could park a car anywhere within it, but in terms of accessing from the highway, the proposal is to have the drop curb on this, adjacent to the, you can see the arrow on the screen, adjacent to the northern boundary. So a car would, if you can imagine a rectangle in there, go straight in and park along this area. So it's only this bit of the parking area which would need to be marked out as an access point in there, rather than obviously coming all the way down here, which is where the wall has been demolished to. The applicant did previously look for an opportunity to have one space there and one space there, if you will, and a drop curb covering that whole area, but the Highway Authority has said no, we're concerned about that. By coming up here, you're around the bend, having a single dropped curb, so to speak, and parking in parallel with that boundary, they're satisfied in that circumstance. There would be no highway safety concerns. So a larger drop curb, more cars, they do have a concern quite rightly there, but a single one is acceptable.
So just to clarify, that's the part where the new fence is going to be rather than the wall?
Yes, obviously there's a new railing fence connecting throughout that whole area, as you can see there. So, but obviously that would be a vehicular gate at that point, running in parallel. So you would park again, to be clear, in that area there. So,
what would be the way of preventing two cars being parked there? Should we want to?
You'd have little ability to prevent that, same as you have little ability to prevent anybody parking a car on their property. They wouldn't be able to, they'd have to bump over a curb to get into it, and there may well, of course, be cars parked, obstructing the broader space to get two cars in there. Now, obviously, you could drive a car in, manoeuvre it around, tuck it into the corner of your front garden, and then park on that basis. That would be within the gift, but same anyone with a front garden that isn't obstructed could fill up their front garden with cars or bicycles, motorbikes, etc. In the normal way. So we can't actually control, once people are in their property, what they're doing, but what we can control, and what the condition proposed by the Highway Authority is proposing to do is say, no, we do want to be absolutely clear on the nature of that drop curb, and it will be just the minimum sufficient to enable that one space in and out. But obviously, once you're on your property, if the resident wants to cut a hole in their front wall and drive into their living room, they have the entitlement to do so.
Thank you, that's very clear. I'll leave the rest of what I want to say to comments.
Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, comments. Back to you, Councillor Smythe.
I walk through this area and past this property at least once a week, and I've watched this unfolding with some horror. I think that the walls in this particular conservation are really important to the landscape of Southsea. I think if this application had been presented with a single gate exactly where you could get in one car, and I think if there'd been a landscaping offer to complement the existing tree that's in the corner on the left of that diagram, and if we could be absolutely guaranteed it was a permeable drive. You mentioned that you thought it was. That's probably a question I should have asked. I mean, it doesn't look permeable to me, and I'm really worried about it. And I think that it would be, we know that a lot of people in those streets have tried to take their walls down. There's a lot of feeling about it, and I think that the existence of that enormous, potentially movable fence to replace, and gate to replace a huge amount of the wall on the corner, should be absolutely ruled out. So I would like to refuse permission for this. If the applicant wanted to come back again with something that was a small gate, a marked out space for the car, a lot of planting and a lot of permeability, I would be willing to look on that with some favour. But seeing as it's all done, I feel we're being held over a barrel on this one, and I would like to recommend refusal.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Dorrington.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be possible to just bring up the photograph of the front aspect? Yeah, that one will do. This is a conservation area, so therefore it's an area that I believe Portsmouth City Council and the residents are trying to keep aesthetically pleasing to people in the local community. As much as I applaud people trying to put in vehicular access at the front of their homes to aid with parking on the roads, what I'm seeing here, in my mind, is somebody that has, for whatever reason, floundered that and completely paved over their whole front garden to make it not sympathetic to the area, but more like a Sainsbury's forecourt. I've also got a concern over the railing idea, because I can envisage in future purpose those railings being put on hinges, drop bolts being put in there. They're just going to be slid back 2, 3, 4 cars parked across that curb. It's taking away, in my mind, from the whole purpose of a conservation area in the first place. Secondly, I do have a concern, and this is probably more for planning enforcement. Given my numerous years in the civil engineering background, I'm not seeing permeable paving. I'm seeing standard Marshalls driveline 50s laid down as cheaply as possible. However, that's not for this committee, that's probably for enforcement. So I would support Judith with a proposal to refuse.
Okay, Councillor Valley.
I mean, I'm just jealous that you've got a garage. I can't believe you're not using it in Southsea. I would be tempted to, you know, make a door at the back of the garage so you can walk into your garden. Just a suggestion.
I have to say I have a slightly different view. I think in a conservation area, if this was one of the Victorian houses with their wall, then I would be very concerned. But this is something built in the 60s or 70s. I know some people think architecture in the 60s and 70s was lovely. I have to say I applauded when the tricorn went. So I don't think that the loss of that piece of wall hurts in the conservation area, and therefore I would be happy. But that's the point of this committee, is to hear different views.
Sure.
Okay.
May I just provide a little commentary of assistance, just so
Of
there's
course
no
you can.
confusion. So, planning permission was granted in 1975 for the redevelopment of this corner with these 6 houses. The wall was already there, so this isn't a 60s wall.
Okay.
The conditions referenced in the deputation did say that actually as part of the scheme you need to retain that wall. That was part of the landscaping proposed. It isn't and shouldn't be confused with an obligation to retain that wall in perpetuity. That's not what the word it is to say, no, of this, actually, you've got a nice boundary wall, can you keep that, please, as part of the development? And obviously that has been done. There has been some alterations with fences put on top of it, as noted, which whether I don't know what consent they may have had, but the wall is there. So it is a heritage value in its own right. That said, to give you the other side of it, though, while this is a 1975 conservation area, sorry, pre-1975, not conservation area, so this was there and this wall was identified as having some merit. In 2010, the Council reviewed and updated and provided a series of Article 4 directions restricting what one can and cannot do in different conservation areas, and members have seen these before. They go to alterations to roofs, alterations to facades, alterations to walls, those attributes that are considered appropriate. Quite consciously, in this conservation area, not all of the conservation areas' front boundary walls have been listed in that direction. Not to be confused with listing in the listed building sense. And indeed, this boundary wall has not been included in that. So if one says, well, it's been included in the conservation area back when, it was not identified in 75 as important, it was reviewed in 2010 as not being necessary to have an Article 4 direction. So the precedent, if you will, either way, takes you in between those two. You know, I would undeniably say the wall absolutely has a positive contribution, but its removal, as has occurred, we feel is a neutral impact. Certainly not a positive loss. It's insufficiently negative to be of concern. So it's not the case that it's a modern wall and it doesn't matter, but it's also not the case that it's a really important historic wall. If it was, I suggest you would have included it in the Article 4 direction in 2010.
Thank you. I think I have seen Councillor Candlish being on the verge of potentially asking to speak. Councillor Candlish, am I correctly interpreting you?
I can confirm that I have been on the verge of waiting to speak, but I was going to wait for Judith to say her comments and then say mine. But I'm willing to speak now if you call upon me. Firstly, I think, as others have said, I don't see the security concerns as being a driver. I think the road safety side, it's relatively slow traffic, is not a big one. The parking issues are quite interesting because you could argue that this would be a reduction, neutral, or even an addition, because I do also worry that actually this will be encouraging at least 2 vehicles to be put onto this hard standing, which would actually be an improvement in the sense it would be creating extra space, but I don't think that's really what we're about here. The final comment, and my biggest one, which is probably at the moment leading to where I'm going, and it's unusual for me, as I'm not always the biggest supporter of conservation in terms of the relative balances, is we say that usually that developments need to preserve and enhance a conservation area, and I definitely don't think that that does here. The wall itself is not particularly memorable or interesting, but its removal and replacement with the fence, I think, is quite significant within the area. And I think, although we look at each case on its individual merits, would be tending to set some direction and precedent, perhaps. So I am, yeah, as you can see, I'm leaning towards not accepting. And I particularly like, sorry, one last comment, Judith, Councillor Smythe, was that the statement that had this come to us as a single narrow entrance through the existing wall, I would be supporting it. But based on the application that I see in front of me, I am minded not to.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
I meant to say earlier that I'm very worried about precedent here. I know there are a number of residents who want to do the same sort of thing. And second of all, in response to the planning officer's comments, I think actually the quality of that wall is all right. I would just want to see it extend. I do think sometimes in conservation areas we maintain a falling down Victorian wall, and it doesn't enhance the conservation area. So I don't take the view there's anything intrinsically good with the wall that was there, but I do take the view that needs a much smaller opening in it, if not building at all. And had that come to us with some proposals for a genuinely permeable front garden and some more planting, I might have been swayed, but as it is, it's a precedent and it's not welcome. I'm glad I wasn't on the planning committee when those houses were approved, by the way, but that's another matter.
But, Judith, you wouldn't have been born.
It was the year I moved to Portsmouth.
Councillor Atwell.
Just, is there a kind of a wider image? Did I miss that? Is there a picture?
No, which is why I was unhelpfully flicking in that notice. It's there, the 2 sides of the driveway, if you will. So I can give everyone epilepsy, or we can settle on one. Yeah.
Just trying to take it in. Okay. Well, look, I'm persuaded by Dr. Holman's deputation and colleagues' comments. I should be supporting Councillor Smythe.
Okay, anybody else who wishes to comment? Okay, thank you. Can I see, there's one proposal on the table which is for refusal, which is proposed by Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Dorrington.
Members, as you would expect, I'm going to require some specific wording for a reason for refusal. The key issue I'd invite members to consider in their wording, because I believe it is relatively clear that actually it is not the demolition of the wall of concern, it is the provision of the railings that is the point of concern, because obviously if we are expecting, as indeed we would, the applicant to take some further action, a new application or an alteration, it's important that we be clear what it is you want to see from them. So it isn't the demolition of the wall, but the railings, so it would be the proposed new railings. They could arguably leave it as is and it would be acceptable with the gap, or do you require the wall to be rebuilt because the demolition of the wall is harmful? That's what we're going to need to capture in the wording.
Start. The reason for refusal is the loss of a continuous wall which characterises the conservation area. I'm not sure we can at this stage put something in about the permeability or the loss of garden in the front. And I would like to say and the creation of a precedent. The loss of a continuous wall, which is an essential characteristic of this conservation area, and the precedent it could set is the reason I would propose.
If I may, I would strongly encourage you don't. Planning is not precedent-led, so it doesn't set a precedent. So it doesn't take you anywhere. And just apologies, because the summary I gave it wasn't the loss of the wall that was your concerns. It was the fact that there's these new railings coming in. So apologies if I have misunderstood the debate for the last 20 minutes.
No, I don't. I think that bit of wall that's been rebuilt is quite nice. It just needs to be rebuilt right the way along. So I don't have a problem with the intrinsic nature of the wall. I think we need to have a wall, and it has to, by default, be a new wall now because the old one's gone. And I don't know quite how to phrase that, rather than saying it's the loss of a continuous wall built to a high standard. It's not the loss of the Victorian wall. I don't think it was a Victorian wall there anyway. It wasn't.
Sure.
And I perhaps haven't phrased it correctly. I mean, the replacement of the boundary with railings is certainly bad for the townscape.
Councillor, I think Councillor Candlish is attempting to help.
Good.
I'm attempting to help by wondering whether we add something around, because what is different about this and why are we concerned, and we had the Sainsbury's forecourt feel, it's that the character of these gardens is that the gardens are themselves enclosed.
Yes.
And the restoration of a wall covering the majority of the space would alleviate that concern. So that's what we feel we need to see. Does that build on it's not just a wall? Because I think it is linking back to. Sorry.
Let's do one at a time. Mr. Maguire, does that help?
It does. It's taking it in a direction I didn't believe you were looking at. So obviously, you've got two key characteristics, and it's entirely in your gift decision that is the result of the loss of a continuous wall and loss of enclosure of the front garden of the property, which are essential characteristics of the conservation area, is harmful to that character. Contrary to PCS 23 would be the way it looks at. I'm just slightly confused because obviously the proposal is to reinstate that continuity and enclosure, but with a railing. So I'm not sure it stands up if your concern is the railing. Yeah.
So.
Yes, isn't it something around that the railings neither conserve or enhance the area?
If it assists members, because you have two very different development activities. You have the removal of a wall, which obviously is a loss of a continuous wall and a loss of enclosure. That's one activity. It has occurred. That may be unacceptable. We've got the wording for that. You've then got a new activity, which is, and the proposal to put in railings is an incongruous design feature or is causing highway safety or whatever your concern about the railings may be. But there are two different reasons almost for refusal, and it's trying to understand which is or are both your
We
concerns.
need both to have both reasons. The replacement of the wall with railings is damaging the nature of the conservation area.
Councillor Atwell, is that of your view as well? Or okay. Do you think we have come to a conclusion amongst those people putting forward a proposal for refusal?
We have those two reasons. It's not simply the enclosure of the front garden, it's the existence of a continuous wall around that corner. And therefore, one of the reasons the present development is objectionable is that the railings are an inappropriate replacement for an important wall.
Can I point out that there would have been no continuous wall because there would have been an entrance way to get to the front door. But yeah, I'm just trying to make sure they're accurate. Ian, have you got anything that you could like to read to us so that we can get to a vote?
believe so. And I think we can probably include it in one for ease of legibility by the applicant. By result of the loss of a continuous wall and loss of enclosure of the front garden of the property, which is an essential characteristic of the conservation area, and its replacement with the proposed railing, which are considered to be of inappropriate design, results in harm to the character of the area, contrary to PCS 23.
Those people putting forward that, are you happy with that wording? Excellent. Can we come to a vote then?
Is that wording still okay, given that there would have been a front gate in there?
I've just put on this image, which is the neighbouring property, but I think, and if you ask anybody, is that a continuous wall with a gate in the middle, I think it's pretty clear, and as you say, the history of the property explains all of that. I don't believe it is unclear, and indeed, of course, the applicant is in the room to understand the nature of the commentary made. But yes, you are stating that the continuity of the wall is important, so consequently, that is a negative commentary on a wider gap, but obviously that doesn't stop the applicant seeking that wider gap, that single parking space you've referred to, Councillor Smythe, and justifying it, but knowing that obviously the preference, if you will, is continuity of the wall. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Candlish, you want to speak more?
Just very briefly, can you just read the second part of that, which is talking about the visibility into the garden piece? Because the objection, I think, around the railings is that it makes it so open. And I'm not sure that we captured that. So is it visually...
The wording I have down, and so obviously entirely for you to amend as you see fit, is the loss of a continuous wall and loss of enclosure of the front garden of the property.
So my concern is that an open set of railings encloses the space, but it is not visually
the loss of a continuous wall and loss of visual enclosure of the front garden of the property, I believe, would cover that, because obviously enclosure can be done with a piece of string, but visual enclosure does require something that obstructs visibility. Yeah.
Okay. All right, colleagues. There is only one proposal that has been proposed and seconded on the table, and that is for refusal. Can I see those in favour of refusal, please show. Those against? And no abstentions, because there aren't anybody else to vote. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That planning application is refused. Okay, let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, to number 26, Fearon Road.
Fearon Road. This is an application for the change of use of a C3 dwelling house to a 7-bed HMO. Members may recall the address. Plan permission has previously been...
Ian, can I hold it? You don't need to stay for the whole of the meeting if you don't want to, but if you want to, you're more than welcome, but we don't tie you to your seats.
Plan permission has previously been sought for a change of use on this site in a similar way, and Planning Committee refused the application due to concerns about the natural light and ventilation into the communal dining area. This is covered in paragraph 1.13 of the report. So this is the application site. In the normal way, as you can see, a very low number of HMOs in the area, so well below 10%. That is the existing floor plans. These are the proposed. The fundamental difference between this and the scheme the council had previously looked at is they are now providing a lantern here over the communal floor space, as well as mechanical extraction for the kitchen facilities to overcome those previous concerns. There are some images. You can see the degree of light coming into the communal area supported by that lantern. The applicant is therefore inviting you to come to a new conclusion regarding those concerns that previously warranted refusal on June of this year. The site otherwise is fully compliant with policy. I've taken you through the percentage, where's the rooms, There's the room sizes, and those rooms, those annotated there, you can see the sizes listed in paragraph 5.10 of the report. All the bedrooms are a little bit over 10 metres and with a nearly 33 square metre communal space well lit by that roof lantern is intended to create a high quality living environment in accordance with your policy and is consequently recommended for the grant of planning permission. We have no comments on the SMAT and we have the agent, Mr. Farr, speaking in deputation, and Councillor Simpson here as well.
Thank you much indeed. Mr. Farr, would you like to go first?
Thank you. I'm doing 3 in a row, so just to avoid too much repetition, by way of introduction, I work for Applecore, who are architectural consultancy, but happen to have an in-house planning team. I've been working in planning for over 6 years now, and I now work with a small but very talented team of architects, and among other things, we've designed many HMOs in the UK. Our designs have never been subject to refusal of an HMO licence, and we ensure all our designs are fully compliant with planning, building control and HMO licensing. We work hard to ensure we stay at the forefront of any changes to legislation, to ensure our client has the best possible experience with us and is left with great design, shared living home, to give tenants the best possible living experience. We're passionate about providing our clients with the best possible service. All of the applications I represent today fully comply with policies PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan, and also with the Houses in Multiple Occupation supplementary planning document. I would not be endorsing them if this was not the case. As Mr. Maguire said, this was refused at committee in June due to the lack of light in the communal area. It was our error to not include the roof lantern on the plans, which you've now seen the roof lantern in the revised plans and in the photos on the presentation. We have appealed the refusal, but then we made the decision that we'd rather come back to planning in the hope that you'd see that the area is well lit and has both natural and mechanical ventilation. We'd rather, have a second opinion from yourselves than go through the appeal process. And we also feel that the layout of this kitchen is an improvement in comparison to a previously approved application for a 6-person HMO at the same address. Another reason for refusal was the lack of SPA mitigation, but this was actually agreed and paid many weeks before the application was determined. All bedrooms meet or exceed 10 square metres and all benefit from ensuite facilities, and there's 32.98 square metres of communal space. The property will be finished to a high specification. Our client is keen to offer tenants high-end accommodation. The property will be professionally managed, and any issues, if there are any, will be dealt with promptly. The application fully complies with the policies mentioned earlier, and I hope you will look upon it more favourably. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Simpson, welcome.
Hi, I'm hoping mine isn't also going to have some additional percussion, but it looks like so far so good. Thank you, Chair. I am disappointed yet again to see this HMO application for a Super HMO sous genre at 26 Fearon Road, the last being in June, where it was refused to be converted from C4 to a sous genre due to the communal area. While the committee will judge each application on its own individual merits, I think it should be noted that this is practically identical to the previous application, only thing added being a roof lantern. While this might add some additional light, I would question, is it enough? Also, is the hallway leading to the kitchen communal space included in the dimension spacing standards? If it is, it surely should not, as it adds very little to the communal space, which then also questions if it meets our spacing standards, considering multiple bedrooms barely make 10 metre squared, bedroom 5 especially. The residents and I do hope the committee question the hallway communal room size if it's included in the dimensions that allows this application to meet our spacing standards. Also, if the committee feel the roof lantern would bring in enough light in all parts, as half the kitchen dining area with the dining table and chairs would be in the shadows or 24/7 tungsten light, as seen in the images. If the 7th bedroom wasn't there, you would have a bright and healthy communal room with more circulation of air and just overall better standards for all tenants that want to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Maguire, there was a specific question there about the measurements of the communal space, whether it includes the hallway, I think from the front door down to the entrance of that communal area. Would that...
Yeah, if the question is regarding the separate room that is the hallway, the stairwell and hallway, no, obviously it doesn't. It is the room itself which is measured. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, questions? Councillor Smythe.
This is just a question about presentation, really. It seems to me we're not seeing double beds here. They seem smaller than they normally are in other plans that we have. So they've got two tiny small pillow. I know we're not about furniture layout. I do understand that, but this is, I think, particularly disturbing that normally it's double bed we see. Is that correct?
So we don't have dimensions on the, as it is out with our concern, but yes, I agree, they probably do look to be single beds. I'm not disturbed, I'm gratified to see that. These are all single occupancy rooms. There is no obligation to provide a double bed. Clearly residents, either by landlord's consent or their own choice, will choose how to furnish their rooms. If they wish to use their 10 plus square bedroom room in a different way, they may well choose to have a single bed to maximise the other utility of the room. A double bed would be just as disingenuous to assume it would be installed as a single bed would, so I have absolutely no concerns about that.
Thank you, that's a useful comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Atwell.
I mean, clearly the lantern is a welcome addition, but is there any way that you can help us to understand how much more light that will give?
No, there's been no light survey undertaken. We are satisfied from these photographs and the visits undertaken by officers that it is an acceptable light level based on the reasonable judgment of a professional planner. But no, we wouldn't expect and haven't in this case required a BRE standard light survey to tell you the number of lux and so on and so forth. It is a well-lit room. It is a large room, but any property with a large room will have darker elements as they are further away. I think that top left image well illustrates that it's a very good and comfortable living space.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? No? Okay, comments? Do I have a proposal? Councillor Cordy. Matthew.
Thank you. In recent committees, we've heard a lot of deputations and concerns from residents regarding spacing standards. Questions around hallways, doorways, penetration of light, which has just come up just now. Am I able to propose that we arrange a site visit to this property? I feel that this would give us an opportunity to make sure that the rooms do meet the size and standards in our own minds, and I think it would help us make more informed decisions in the future.
Entirely okay for you to make a proposal for a site visit? And it would mean deferring this item until the next committee?
Members, if I may say, it's entirely within your gift to do so. I would be concerned that it's poor practice. I think the applicant, Apple Core, have on numerous occasions extended visits to properties to help inform and, as you say, to get a feel of what 10 square metres looks like, etc. I'm sure, I won't speak for them, but I'm sure they would be happy to allow that. Whether we should withhold planning permission at this stage to do that seems rather unreasonable. This is the second time this has been in front of the council. We have both photographic and drawing evidence of it fully meeting your policies. A delay is a delay. It's not a refusal, but a delay doesn't seem to be in any way reflective of good practice. If there was a concern, for example, the lantern wasn't there and we thought it was too dark, that would be a reason to refuse it. But and thus, rather than refusing it, a site visit to see whether you're justified in your concerns is a reasonable action. This doesn't sound like a reasonable action in this stage. Other schemes with different lighting, maybe elsewhere on this agenda, might be worthy of deferral issue, but I can't see how this one, which is comfortably meeting your policies, and we have illustrations because it is retrospective in its design of what it looks like, is a justified deferral. But it's entirely in your gift, as always, members.
Councillor Vallely.
On this occasion, I don't think I need to go and have a look. I don't go around with my tape measure because we have qualified staff and I trust them, and that will be enough for me.
I'm happy to second the proposal for a site visit. I think if members want to go for a site visit, then it seems that that's a fair thing to do. Not only to learn about this one, but to inform other decisions. So I'd be happy to. It's only going to delay it by one meeting, so it's a couple of weeks. So I'll be happy to second that proposal. Councillor Candlish.
So, I was...
So I think you're loitering on saying you don't agree with me, but you're allowed to say you don't agree with me.
On the contrary, I was about to agree with you in part. So actually, I do think it would be a really good thing for this committee to go and look at one of these sorts of properties, because I think there's a real discussion we have each time about the acceptability and the size and how they feel, so that we can come to a more informed view going forward. I'm often a supporter of HMO applications because I think they typically raise the average standard and the quality of low-cost accommodation in the city, but I know that other people have other views about that, and I think an in-site visit would be a really good way of addressing that. However, the bit I disagree with, or I couldn't remember your point anyway, is I think that the point that Ian raises, that on this specific application, personally, I now have enough information to be able to make a decision. I think we should go through to that decision, because there are so many of these applications coming through, and they are all more or less the same, and the same issues around infrastructure and loss of family homes is coming up, and the internal dimensions and layout. So I think we could find another one without having to delay this.
Councillor Smythe.
I'd like to second that. We actually have a very poor record of getting a number of people to attend site visits as well, so I don't want to waste officers' time, as sometimes has appeared to be the case. So I would second Peter's recommendation.
Although my recommendation was actually that we did do a site visit subsequently, because not everyone has been to them, and I think that would be good to do.
A recommendation about other applications on this one, but yes. I noted what you said.
Okay.
So, I think the advantage of going for a site visit on this one is this one has been completed. Other ones we've been to look at are in production, and actually seeing something that's completed would be useful. But there's clearly
I'm sure we could do that without deferring the approval.
Well, shall we ask Mr. Farr, if we're allowed to? Ian is loitering to say I'm not.
We're not here to speak to applicant. So I can say without confidence, and we can obviously glance in Mr. Farr's direction. As I say, Apple Corps have extended the invitation on numerous occasions. I can't imagine they would rescind it here, but I would suggest this is a conversation we can have outside of the planning committee. You have another half dozen HMOs to do. It may well be some of those are worthy of deferral for site visits, for all I know. They all have different attributes. They are all in different stages of construction and manufacturing. I'm not sure we need to settle this question now.
Mr. Councillor Atwell, do I see you loitering?
I'm loitering with intent. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation to grant conditional permission. I have taken up the invitation to go and visit a completed property, and I'd always encourage members to do similar.
So, Councillor Gawley, Councillor Gawley, if we could, if an invitation, well, I can't promise an invitation, but an invitation has been given in the past to visit. If that invitation, if there was an expectation that there would be an invitation to go and look at a finished product by Apple Corps, do you think that would meet your concern, or would you like to keep your proposal on the table?
No, that would definitely meet my concern. Thank you, Chair.
I think Apple Corps have in the past been happy to invite. So if we can, if we leave Ian to see if he can organise that, I think we're getting a gentle nod from Apple Corps, yes, and a thumbs up. So that will be, they're happy to do that. Do you think, are you happy then to take your proposal for a deferral off the table, Councillor Cordy?
I am, Chair.
Thank you. So I think we therefore have, if that's off the table, then I think Councillor Valerly's proposal that we don't go on a site visit also falls, which means we're up to Councillor Atwell's proposal of proposing officer recommendation. Are there any other proposals coming forward? Yeah, yes, Mary did. Keep up, Councillor Atwell. So that, are there any other proposals? No. Okay, that proposal is the only one on the table. Can I see those in favour of granting planning permission? Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much indeed. Planning permission is granted. Okay, thank you very much indeed. 94 Oriel Road. Oh, and before that, can I thank Mr. Farr for your kind offer. And if we can get a date sorted before the next planning committee, I think everybody would be pleased to do something quite quickly.
94 Oriel Road, this is an application for the change of use of a city dwelling house to an 8-bed HMO. Plan permission was granted in 2023 for its change of use from C3 to a C3 or C4 use. That has not yet been implemented. Consequently, plan permission is required for that change of use to 8 bedrooms. There is the property for reference. Again, not too many other HMOs in the area. We're about 5–6% mix, which obviously would already include this one as it has permission to be an HMO. So there's no change in that overall percentage. That is the existing original C3 floor plans and elevations. There is the to be expected rear and dormer extensions, and there is the proposed layout. As you can see, a fairly standard HMO layout that members would have seen previously. As I say, this has consent for 6 beds. The difference, and there's some just images of it, the difference between the two, that's the 6-bed one that was granted from the 23 permission. Those 2 rooms already existed, but they were labelled as non-habitable bedrooms, and they're now bedrooms, 7 and 8, so the layouts were the same, so they've just been brought into habitable bedroom use, so there's no actual real change in the building under this scheme. The room sizes, which are all 10 metres and above, are listed in paragraph 8.12. Consequently, the 24.5 square metre communal floor area meets your guidance. It is fully policy compliant on that basis with a recommendation to permit.
Thank you. We have a return of Mr. Farr and Councillor Simpson.
I'll just check I'm on a better microphone now. Excellent.
Much better.
Yeah, the speaker's a bit funny down there too. Okay, so although this application states the property is a C3, it had been in use for an HMO previously. The previous owner was unable to provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate the continuous use, so for the purposes of planning we had to say it was a C3. During our initial survey, it was observed that the property was in very poor condition with a number of people living in each room. This was a couple of years back now, I think. Our client is looking to completely refurb and upgrade the existing property and significantly increase the current standard of accommodation. Rooms will be offered on a single-use basis only. The property will be professionally managed, and any issues, if they arise, will be dealt with promptly. All bedrooms meet or exceed 10 square metres. All benefit from ensuite facilities. The required communal area when all bedrooms exceed 10 square metres is 22.5. This property provides 24.72. The property also benefits from side access, making cycle ownership easier for prospective tenants, and we find that keen cyclists opt for properties with access from the side or rear of the properties. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. There is actually a coincidence on this one, but I'll get to the end of my deputation and you'll see why. Unlike the previous application, this application is a C3, 3-bedroom to an 8-bedroom HMO, a super HMO, almost 3 times its original purpose. This is an example of an overdevelopment. 5 of the 8 bedrooms barely make the required standard, 10 metres squared, for this application to fall into the 22.5 metre square bracket communal dining room standards. It is 24.72. If anything, it is relying too much on the 10 metres squared rooms so that the communal space is accepted. I would also question the rear room, bedroom 3. While there is a supposed escape room with no dimensions applied, are bedrooms really suitable for the back of the kitchen? You know, would anyone want non-stop noise and smell entering their room? Also, if the person was in a wheelchair, how would they get out of an elevator window? Or are HMOs not inclusive for tenants with disabilities? I will not assume how the committee will decide today's application. I would hope they would agree that this is an overdevelopment and refuse. However, also unlike the previous application, I will propose that you defer for a viewing to see for yourself if you think 8 bedrooms work in a 3-bedroom family home, if the dimensions are true to the application, which has been questioned by residents over the last planning committees. This is a good example to be viewed, and was my original proposal irrelevant of the committee's suggestion in the last application? Coincidence at its finest. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, colleagues? No questions, okay, comments? Councillor Candlish, you are loitering on the edge of saying something.
Cogitating. So truthfully, I'm always suspicious of HMOs which are, 7, 8 bedrooms within the size. I think it really is pushing the envelope about what is acceptable, unless there are unusual circumstances around it. However, from a legal and policy basis, I can see no reasons to reject this, and therefore, with some reluctance perhaps, I might be minded to approve it, because I think generally the story of properties being brought into a more up-to-date status with renewal is actually probably overall positive, and we do need these types of property.
Okay. Any other comments? I don't have a proposal on the table. I do have a suggestion from Councillor Simpson that we go for a site visit on this one. Is there any enthusiasm for that? No. There isn't any enthusiasm for that. I'm very sorry, Councillor Simpson. Candlish, was I not listening, and did you propose officer recommendation?
I did not formally so propose, Chair, but I think in the circumstances now called upon by Councillor Smythe, I will come off the pot and say I propose that we accept the recommendations of the officers.
And Councillor Smythe, as you nudged him, are you saying you're seconding him? Okay, we now have a proposal on the table. Are there any other proposals, ladies and gentlemen? No other proposals. Therefore, can I have those in favour of the application being given planning permission, please show. And that's 5. And then those against, please show. That's 2. And those abstaining, that's 1. The planning permission is therefore granted. Okay, let's move along to Laburnum Grove. I don't think Nicola Hickson, who's on the list to come and do a deputation, is here. Is that correct? So it's just Mr. Farr, sorry. Okay, so let's look at Laburnum Grove 231.
Thank you. This is 231 Laburnum Grove. We do have 275 next on the agenda, which has a different agent. So 231 Laburnum Grove. This is the last of the applications, which is a C3 change of use. This one to a 7-bed HMO. So there is the property. You can see in Laburnum Grove. We are very few HMOs in the area. There is another one pending within this location, 245, hasn't been determined yet. Even if that one was to go, that's only going to take you to 3%, but you've got to take them in sequence, so this is less than 2% mix of HMOs in the area. There is the existing C3 floor plan and elevations. As you can see, a dormer extension to facilitate the additional accommodation, and there are your bedrooms and communal floor space layout. The bedrooms are described in paragraph 8.12. As you can see, they're all over 10 square metres, the smallest being 10.1, the largest 14.25. The communal kitchen diner, therefore, at 25.7 as listed here, is above the 22.5 square metre limitations. The application is therefore fully compliant with policy, and we are satisfied it creates an overall acceptable living environment. I think that's some fairly unnecessary images, so I'll leave you with that. As I say, we don't have the objector in, so we have the agent speaking, and nothing to add from the SMAT, but happy to answer any questions. Okay, Mr. Farr.
Thank you. I'd just like to say we're always happy to accommodate pre- or post-committee site visits. You can contact us directly or through the planning officer, and we shall make arrangements. So this is 231 Laburnum Grove. All bedrooms range from 10 square metres to 14.4 square metres, all benefit from ensuite facilities. The property provides 25.78 square metres of communal space, and the communal area also has the benefit of 2 roof lanterns for additional light and large bifold doors at the rear. The property will be finished to a high specification, as our client is keen to offer tenants high-end accommodation, and as before, the property will be professionally managed and any issues would be dealt with promptly if there were any. The application fully complies with all the relevant policies and supplementary documentation as mentioned before and referred to in the officer's report. And the planning officer has recommended this fully compliant application for approval today, and I ask you to fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, colleagues? I have Councillor Smythe and Councillor Atwell.
Looking at the proposed ground floor, could you answer the question about whether that corridor running from the main corridor of the house with the door at the bottom of it, is that piece of unusable space included in the calculations of the size of the communal area, the kitchen, dining room?
Yes, the corridor is included in the 25 point, whatever it was, 25.7 square metre. If you were to exclude that corridor, it would take it down to 22.27 square metres.
Could we just have that number again? 22.27.
27.
Thank you. Councillor Atwell. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, you could put some shelves.
Okay. Colleagues, I think therefore it's clear that in terms of usable space that falls below our standard as required, and one of the bedrooms is right on the limit, but it's on the right side of the limit, therefore the rules are the rules. But if we exclude that corridor, that the communal space is below the standard that we would expect. Therefore, I'll propose refusal of this application because the amount of communal space isn't large enough to benefit. And Ian, you'll have the wording because it's about.
Members, I will just step in here and say, you don't do planning by numbers. You will not win it on appeal. if you are satisfied that this space, I'm not going to even tell you how big it is off the top of my head, is unacceptable as a living environment, you can express that in your own terms and defend why that would be the case. Whether the difference of 33 square centimetres it makes it unusable, that is a judgment you'll need to make. The numbers are a guide, not a definitive point. So your wording, therefore, is around the acceptability of the living environment for future residents, and obviously you can make your own judgments on that. But I've said it 4 times in this meeting alone, we do not do planning by numbers.
Okay. In which case, I suppose that makes it easier because the room size is a tiny 10.1 metres. Therefore, that should be, it's too small as well then. So that would reinforce, if we're not doing it by numbers, that there's another reason.
I will have to step in, Chairman, to obviously insert some common sense. The minimum size for a bedroom, so it can be occupied under licensing, which is very numbers oriented, is 6.5 square metres. So any suggestion that a 10.1 square metre room is too small clearly will not only line you up for losing an appeal, but for unreasonable behaviour. If you are happy that the remaining space, because of the lack of utility that a corridor will provide, undisputably, is unacceptable, that is the judgment you can make. But please do not attempt to justify it with false arithmetic.
So, as I was hoping to say, and before I was mown down, that that we have rules that say if you've got rooms above a certain standard, then you can have a smaller communal area, but this falls below even that level, and therefore the amount of usable space for the communal area is too low, and therefore not of sufficient quality and standard to meet the needs of future occupants, and I'd therefore propose refusal on that ground. So I'm not sure if age comes before beauty, but and I'm not sure who's going to claim which. No, Judith, you will claim beauty.
I want to know, and it's a question actually rather than a comment. The cycle storage, it doesn't show us where that is, where it's where it has to, whether cycles have to go through that corridor or not. My feelings about this are that, and this is a comment, the amount of space we're short is tiny, and it does have the merit of being a kind of square shape, this kitchen, and is therefore usable. It would be particularly usable if one could put some narrow shelving along the side there, but that depends on what bicycles have to do to get to the bicycle shelter.
So does this benefit from rear access?
I don't believe there is any rear access, so that corridor will be the route through the bifold doors at the back.
Okay, Councillor Atwell. Sorry.
Yeah, I think nevertheless this has the merit of being a nice wide room. We've approved a lot of very narrow rooms, and it's a very small difference. Okay. I wondered if the tanks room could be made a little bit smaller, possibly. We're splitting hairs here. Okay. I think I would, with a bit of reluctance, move to approve the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Atwell.
I'd like to second your proposal to refuse.
Councillor Atwell, I'm very sorry.
Somebody else already?
Yes, somebody. Well, Councillor North was the next person to speak, and I'd forgotten to call them. So I think out of courtesy, we should go to Councillor North, because I think you were going to second the proposal as well.
I was going to second your proposal.
I thought so. Councillor Atwell, do you mind being gazumped? Okay, so there's one proposal that is proposed and seconded. There's which is my proposal, seconded by Councillor North. There is a second proposal from Councillor Smythe, which has now been seconded by Councillor Valerie.
Just a couple of points of procedural clarification. There is rear access down there, or side access round, so you don't have to take a bicycle through the kitchen. It's just to clear that. And with apologies, in the image you can see on screen, bedroom 1 and bedroom 2 have been into, or rather the numbers in the report, if that's easier, are the wrong way round, because as I just spotted in the report, you can see that the bedroom 1 is the smaller and bedroom 2 the larger, and that's plainly not true from the imagery. So just for clarification, to align the images with the report, if you swap number 1 and 2 on here, all the numbers are correct, they've just been incorrectly labelled. So just so you know what it is you're looking at, so just some procedural clarifications for you.
And actually, I think the big numbers in these reports really help. If they're right, yes. Okay. Colleagues, we have 2 proposals on the table. The first was proposed by myself and therefore comes first for the vote. Councillor Smythe.
I mean, I'd just like to make another, I'm sticking to what I have proposed, but that ensuite associated with bedroom 2, I don't know why they've made it quite that big, because they could have then gained by moving the tanks. And I've got to, I mean, we're splitting hairs here, and I therefore stick with my recommendation. We should accept the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Atwell.
Just my internal voice needs to kind of I need to get it out. So, because we don't do planning by numbers, but I'm never completely comforted by the idea that the bay window is treated as usable space. It's sort of usable. So if we are directed to not look at the numbers in that sort of way, I'm going to revisit my thinking around bay windows and how much of that space is actually practically usable.
Table and chairs?
Well, if I may assist the committee, and indeed we will, and I'm not going to promise we can organise site visits for the next meeting, because I think it may be beneficial to visit more than one site if we can lump you all together, and we can look at certain common arrangements, bay windows being one of them, to help understand what utility they may or may not have. When I've lived in an HMO, I did live in one with a bay window, and I had a desk placed into it, and it was a very significant amenity for me as a student. So I can see that there are utilities to them, but as well as corridors and 10-metre square rooms, we can look at other things and try and get a comprehensive view of what spaces are used by HMO dwellers.
That might be helpful.
Yeah, I have to say, our house has got a bay window which we use.
But also, but you'll have more space away from the bay window. Some of these bedrooms, actually, the square bit of the room is really tight.
Okay, folks. The first proposal is for refusal. Can I see those in favour of refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Split decision. Casting vote, so I'm not going to change my view, so that goes for refusal. Therefore, the proposal to give planning permission by nature falls. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We now move on to 2nd Laburnum Grove.
275 Laburnum Grove. This is one of, and the next, I think, 3 applications, officers are satisfied do not require planning permission. This is a change of use from a 6-bed HMO to a 7-bed HMO. So there is the property. As you can see, a few HMOs in the area are just under 6% mix, obviously including this existing 6-bed HMO property. There is the existing floor plans, and there are the proposed floor plans. I would draw your attention to bedroom 7, which is the most constrained of them, which is consequently a little bit smaller than the others. The measurements are contained in paragraph 5.7 of the report, and as you can see, that has restricted head height over part of it, which obviously is already excluded, and is by far the smallest of the bedrooms, a couple of them over 12 metres there. The resultant communal living space is 31.5 square metres. As said, this application doesn't require planning permission, officer's view, so unconditional permission is recommended. Members may want to come to an alternative view and can do so. If they then wish to go on and assess the merits of the scheme, as I say, we are satisfied it's clearly compliant with PCS 20 and sector policy, and we are satisfied that it does comply with the need for a good quality living environment, notwithstanding bedroom 7. We have no public speaking left in the meeting and nothing on the SMAT either, so happy to take any questions.
Can we do the first bit first? Because if that doesn't happen, then we don't need to go any further, which is whether we think this needs planning permission or not. So I'm going to propose that it does need planning permission. This is an area of high development with huge pressure on parking, litter and antisocial behaviour that is an increase in density of occupation is likely to make worse and therefore is development. Therefore I propose that it does need planning permission. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Can I see those in favour of it requiring planning permission, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, so we now go on to questions for Mr Maguire. Ian, could you just take me through bedroom 7 again? This is 9.7 square metres down to 4.5 feet of height. Everything below 4.5 feet doesn't count, but anything above 4.5 feet does count?
Yeah, your guidance, quite understandably, suggests that where there is reduced head height, 1.5 metres, the utility of that space is obviously dramatically reduced. It has some utility, you can put cupboards and things in it and all of that, but we do look to make a discount for assessing whether or not in making those judgments around the acceptability of a room. So where you have a sloped ceiling, anyone that has ever lived in a property with a sloped ceiling, and many people do, you know full well that the ability to use the full floor space is reduced. So consequently bedroom 7 is a smaller bedroom than the others.
But we've already compensated by a larger kitchen dining area.
Well, so the second question I was going to ask was, we've got an area provided, a communal area of 31.5 metres, and if all the rooms were above 10 square metres, we'd be looking for 22.5. If not all of the rooms are 10 square metres, what would be the amount of communal space our standards require?
Your guidance includes 34 square metres.
So this would fall below. Okay. Colleagues, other questions? No other questions? Okay. It seems to me I propose that we say no to this as not all bedrooms are 10 square metres, therefore it doesn't benefit from the reduction of communal space, and therefore it is below the 34 metres required, and therefore by nature we have to turn this down, would be my proposal.
Members, if I can provide some advice, obviously you don't have to turn it down.
No.
That would be doing planning by numbers and would be false arithmetic again. The bedroom 7 is existing. It's always been consented by this planning authority to be a bedroom, and your standards for 6 occupants are exactly the same. Now, there is an additional occupant, so we can't pretend otherwise, but if you were to do planning by numbers, you've already granted the numbers on this one and they are unaltered. So on that basis, I would make a large point of caution. And again, while it is not 34, it is 31 square metres. It is a generous living environment, and for the sake of 30 square centimetres in a bedroom, I can say I think you have no chance of success on appeal. There's always an outside chance, but I would certainly wouldn't be having any confidence of a success on appeal for that 30 square centimetres in one bedroom that's already be deemed to be acceptable as a bedroom for someone to live and recreate in, being that standard that we have. So I would express extraordinary caution about seeking to grant plan permission for this, notwithstanding obviously the issue around the need for plan permission as has just been resolved. So I would say that you are very unlikely to win this on appeal, and would encourage you to heed that advice.
Okay, Councillor Candlish.
I think you skipped over comments. Which
sorry, my apologies. We didn't have any questions apart from mine.
And then you went straight to
sorry.
the other thing. So the only comment that I would add, which I think adds to the not number-driven but consideration of are we on the edges of satisfactory amenity, is that in contrast to the previous one, this is actually quite a narrow living area, so that even the usability of the communal area, I put in my personal judgment, would be lower than the absolute numbers are suggesting. That said, I think if we look at it in the totality, I am also thinking that it's probably within the guidelines that we have, it is unlikely to be a successful appeal, nevertheless.
Okay, we have one proposal on the table at the moment. Councillor North.
I'll second that proposal.
My proposal, which was to say no, because it's the communal area does not meet the standards that we require to make sure that people have got a decent living area to live in, because not all of the rooms are above the 10 square metre, and therefore it should hit a 34 square metre area, which it doesn't. Councillor Atwell, I can see you loitering.
Well, no, just, I mean, I hope none of us make decisions based on whether we're likely to win appeals or not. We have to look at the application that's in front of us. Obviously, it's useful advice from Ian, but, you know, I'm looking at the application in front of me, and I might like to second your...
What, but you got in too late again. Councillor Smythe.
I think we are in particular difficulties with this one because it already exists, if I'm right, with the bedroom 7 just not being used. Is that correct?
So bedroom 7 is used as a bedroom at the moment under the previous. It's a ground. It's another room that's being altered.
Yes. Yeah. What can you just refresh as to which other room it's being altered? But I mean,
I believe it's bedroom 2, but I'll double check. Yeah.
And that just increases the size of, takes a bite out of the living space. I think for that reason, I would say we should approve this.
Okay.
Recommendation.
And do you have a seconder?
Because I don't think that this is as narrow as we have approved in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm happy to approve it against your wishes.
Councillor Valley, are you happy to second that? Okay. Okay, so the first proposal was for refusal. Can I see those in favour of refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Casting vote, I'm not going to change my mind, so that is refused. Okay, number 101 Oxford Road. I do need to say that a friend of my husband's lives several houses away, but I'm told that that's not a strong enough reason for me not to be here. So, Ian, 101 Oxford Road.
So this is another change of use from a 6-bed to a 7-bed HMO. Officer's recommendation for the reasons we have provided you in great detail before and on many appeals is it does not require planning permission. Notwithstanding that, take you through it. This is a submission of an application that was previously put to this council for an 8-bed HMO. They have altered it to now be a 7-bed HMO. There is the property. So it's a different layout to that previous than we've usually see in this part of the city. That is the proposed ground floor and indeed the room sizes. There you can see many of the rooms are below 10, a couple of them 9.2. The communal floor space though is 34.31 and is a larger, well-appointed series of connected rooms, a dining room on the frontage there, moving through to a kitchen in the middle and a lounge wrapping around the back. So a very well laid out communal space for residents. The bedrooms are then arrayed the rest of the bedrooms are arrayed in the upper floors, 3 on the first, 4 on the 3 on the second, isn't it? With that dormer window providing that additional provision. I'll leave you with that drawing. This is an area that does have a number of HMOs already. I think there's 12, including this one. within the 104 dwellings in the local area. So you're about 11.5% mix, so you're over the 10%. We're just looking at that impact on amenity, therefore, in light of the high quality of that communal space and the fact that it meets your numerical guidance, officers are happy to recommend the grant of plan permission, and we are satisfied that increase of one person would have no demonstrable impact on wider amenity, notwithstanding plan permission is not required for this development. Nothing to add from the SMAT, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, the first item we have to decide is whether this needs planning permission. I suggest that it does. I think the area is very compacted area, very high density of housing, and we know great pressure on parking, antisocial behaviour because it's so close to Albert Road, and litter, and therefore an increased density of occupation is likely to make this worse. And therefore, it should require planning permission. Can I see somebody to second that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Vallely. Can I see all those in favour of that? Please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Questions? I've got one question, Ian. Could you show me where the shower room is? Ah, no, I found it. There are two bathrooms next door to each other on the first floor. Sorry, my apology. That's, yeah. Okay, so there's a loo on the ground floor, bathroom with loo, shower room with loo, both on the first floor next door to each other. Councillor Smythe?
If there are no questions, I'm happy to comment.
Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? No? Councillor Smythe, a comment.
The look of this living area, extending the full length of the building. There are no representations on this one, and I would propose that we gave it approval, subject to conditions about occupation, which is limiting it to 7 in number. I think that's already on the application, so maybe we don't need to that. And I'm not sure about bicycles. Where are they going to go?
So I say, and apologies because the previous application, obviously, which you refused, we didn't need to talk about conditions here. If you are minded to support this one, obviously it's recommended unconditionally, so no conditions have yet been proposed. You would need the standard suite of conditions should you wish to grant it time limit, approved plans.
Yes.
If you felt an occupancy condition, our recommendation would be it never is. Occupancy condition is required, that could be imposed as well. Bicycle storage is in the rear. There is no rear access for this property, so it would be a requirement to provide bicycle storage. You could add as well, certainly, should you feel that was necessary. And the usual conditions and obligations regarding SBA mitigation, of course.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Can we approve it subject to the usual recommendations,
so,
including the occupancy limit, because it's a good thing to have, and second, to have bicycle storage at the back?
I'm happy to second that. Are there any other proposals? Councillor Candlish, you are hovering again. Put your microphone on and...
Sorry, Chair. I agree with Councillor Smythe that I think the integrity and the usability of the space downstairs is very good, better than many of the ones that we look at. I noticed that the bedroom size is below our standard, but on the previous one, I approved it. That was 30 centimetres off. Now we have two which are 80 square centimetres off, and although it is true, you know, at some point we have to kind of draw the line if we actually think it is a meaningful guidance figure to ourselves. Could I just see the bedrooms upstairs again for the sort of shape and usability?
So now I would explain that actually 2.5 metres above your standard, the bedroom sizes.
Have I looked at the wrong one?
Because
so it's providing 34.31 of communal space against a demand of 34, and and the lower standard as if there are all 10 square metres. It's not trying to take advantage of that.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair. I'm clarified.
Is that correct?
Like butter.
Good. Okay, so there's one proposal on the table, which is to grant planning permission. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against, please show. 1, 2. And those abstaining. Nick, you've abstained. Oh, you were 4. You didn't wave. I didn't see you. So let's go. So that's 6 in favour, 2 against, no abstentions. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Last one on this list today is number 44 Percival Road.
So this is a change of use from a 6-bed HMO to a 7-bed HMO again, 44 Percival Road. There is the property. There is its mix in there. We haven't actually put the percentage in the report, but for those that might wish to know that, there are 2 HMOs, including this one, out of 76. So that's 2 point... I'll do the maths there, if I've not got it written down. We put it into the SMAT, I believe. 2.63% HMOs in this area. There is the floor plan. You can see cycle stall to the rear, no rear access, just for clarity as well. There is the existing 6-bed plans, and there are the proposed 7-bed plans. To head off a question, bedroom 7, in this case that's top right, and apologies, we don't have it on the presentation with annotated numbers, but you do have it on the last page of the report in an appendix, so I will point top right is bedroom 7, numbered 7 on the annotated plans. That obviously has reduced head height and that long corridor. The remaining space, excluding the corridor, excluding the reduced head height, is still over 12 square metres. So to give you that reassurance, that's still a very large room. All the other room sizes are contained within table at paragraph 5.7. Plan permission is not required for this application, so members may wish to consider that prior to further discussion, but as noted, even if plan permission were required, we are satisfied it meets all of your guidance and creates a good living environment in an area which is not currently intensified for HMOs and consequently would fully meet policy. I would also just flag a small correction I've added to the table at paragraph 5.7, confirming, as members know, the communal space standard where you're above 10 square metres is 22.5, not 23, as that table incorrectly highlights. Happy to take any questions.
Let's do the first things first, and can I propose that this does need planning permission? It's an area of high development with significant pressure on parking, litter and antisocial behaviour, and an increased density of occupation will make this worse. Councillor North, are you happy to second that?
I am.
Thank you. Can I see those people in favour of saying it needs planning permission? That's unanimous. Okay, questions, colleagues? There are no questions. Comments and proposals. I'm going to propose that we grant planning permission with the usual set of conditions, as it seems to hit all the targets that we put in terms of the space standards, etc. Councillor Dorrington, are you seconding that?
Yes, I'll second that proposal, Chair.
Okay. Are there any other proposals? No? Okay, can I see those in favour of granting planning permission, please show. That's 6. Those against, please show. That's 1. And those abstaining, 1. Okay, planning permission is granted. That is it for today. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for your time today.